back.
Tennis action.
I was going to say, we're back on the court.
Yeah.
A little bit of clay, a little bit of hardwood. A little bit of hard court.
Yeah, that's right. Doing another baseline player today.
Yeah, and we're back at the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chris Quinn, with my co-host, Dom DiTolla. And we're back, like I just said, on that tennis court.
Yes, we are.
Gonna hit another women. Oh, don't say it like that.
Ladies!
Yep. One of the most iconic women's tennis player. And what I saw was like really the driving force what made women's tennis popular.
Yeah, no, without her, women's tennis is not nearly as popular as it is today.
Talking Chris Evert.
Chris Evert.
Yep.
Yeah, not Jim Everett.
Oh, man, that was one of the worst.
Jim Rome getting his ass beat by him. No, this is Chris Evert, born December 21st, 1954 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yeah.
Pretty much born to play tennis.
I was going to say her dad was a tennis pro, and I think he won some Canadian events, so he was like in Canada won some, but pretty much made his entire family a tennis family.
He did. Like, all of her siblings were either professionals or played in college.
Yes.
So, tennis was just kind of part of their lifeblood. And much like Agassi in Nevada, Chris Evert growing up in Florida, weather's always generally nice. You can play tennis year-round if you want to.
Yeah. And what she said later in life was, like, the drive that she had to play tennis was she really just wanted to make her dad happy and wanted that kind of acceptance into his life, because they were talking about how they would yell at each other a lot on the courts.
Yeah.
Like, it was a very volatile, like Agassi, where when you have a parent pushing you, it causes tension.
Tension and friction. And her dad always said, though, between them they had a lot of emotion, but on the court you need to leave that shit at the door.
Yeah.
Because she had a very cold and steely demeanor where she would basically compartmentalize everything so her opponent couldn't gain an edge.
Yeah.
Like, she could be up, a set, and it would be the same reaction as if she was down by a set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard that too after, like, she lost a big final. She could give an interview like 10 minutes later.
Yeah, Brent Musburger was talking about that.
Yep.
How, she wouldn't be inconsolable. She would just be like, let me go clean myself up and I'll talk to you guys.
Yeah.
Like, professional.
Professional,
actually,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like she's in this era of the first time that we have professional athletes have kids and then kind of force their sport on them from a super young age.
Exactly.
So that's why when she comes up, and we're going to get right into it, when she's like 15, she's like beating a ton of the professionals.
Yeah, by 1969, she was the number one rated girl in the U.S. as far as amateur, and only Jennifer Capriati was younger than her to reach number one. And in 1970, won the 16 and under national tournament and beat Margaret Court, who is an iconic women's tennis player in the semifinals. Like, just completely crazy.
Well, that's what everyone was saying was it's obvious that she's going to dominate this sport, because right off of the bat, she was beating the top names.
And a lot of pros at that time despised her.
There was a lot of resentment.
Like, a lot of resentment.
So this was like their first year or maybe second year that they were doing this women's tour.
Yeah.
And she was beating them as an amateur and not taking the money.
Exactly, which probably pissed them off even more.
And there couldn't be a lot of money on the table, too. So
no, you're scratching and clawing to stay on this ladies' professional tennis tour, and you just have this young, pretty amateur waltz in, kick the shit out of you, and not take all the money that you wanted.
And another thing I heard was, because obviously they didn't have a ton of interaction with her, they felt like she was very cold because of the way she was on the court, because nobody was like that on the court. They were very emotional and very not like what we see nowadays with professional athletes. They're very like...
She was very stoic the way that she played.
Yeah.
Just very... It was graceful, but it was just stoic.
Yeah.
Like, almost, not necessarily robotic, but just like, I'm going to go out there and win some tennis today, and I'm going to make you look bad.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. Billie Jean King.
Yep, I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Who actually she saw the potential. She was like, no, this is going to be our star.
This is going to be our star and going to make all of us money in the long run and grow this sport.
So she told the other women, like, let's embrace her. And they really did. After that, I guess it was probably like a year of her beating them in all these tourneys and then them being bummed. And then Billie Jean was like, yeah, no, let's embrace her. And that's when we see her make her Grand Slam debut.
1971, age 16.
It's so crazy.
And she went all the way to the semifinals and lost to Billie Jean King at 16.
Yes.
And this is probably when she's at the top of her game.
Yes.
And
definitely was.
I mean, granted, she's a professional now, but she's 16 years old. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But then went on a 46-game match winning streak.
That's so crazy. Her winning streaks are probably some of the best stats for her.
Yeah, she was the game's best player.
Oh, for years and years and years.
Like in 1973, now that she's about 18, 19 years old, she finishes runner-up at the French and Wimbledon.
Yep.
And the French Open is where she was probably at her best.
Well, they say that clay was her best.
Yeah, clay. And when they did the U.S. Open a couple times on clay is where she really started to shine. But
she actually holds the record. I want to point this out because Nadal beat her for French Open because I think he has 8. But she holds the record for Grand Slams won on clay.
Yeah, because of some of the U.S. Opens.
Yeah.
Because she won overall 2 Aussie, 7 French, 3 Wimbledon, and 6 U.S. Open.
Oh, it's so crazy. Well, let's talk about 74 because 74...
That's a breakthrough.
Yeah, she really comes onto the international scene and really becomes associated with tennis.
She becomes the face of women's tennis essentially in 1974.
Yeah. So she gets engaged to Jimmy Connors.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting one.
They both win Wimbledon, which is awesome. That's what everyone was saying was like the stories that were being written about them were so awesome and like all these.
It's like the perfect tennis power couple. It's almost like Agassi and Steffi Graf.
And they play mixed at the U.S. Open. I think they get runner up. In the mixed doubles. But something I actually saw because they had kind of because they were engaged and then they got broken off. Mm-hmm. Something I saw was Jimmy Connors wrote a book.
Yeah, this is where it gets kind of weird.
It gets so wild. So he wrote a book and said that she was pregnant and she terminated the pregnancy because she wanted to continue on with her tennis career.
Yeah.
She came out and said that was 100% not the case as to why that pregnancy was terminated. So it's one of those where you're just like, oh, that was just a bad.
Do you even want to write that down?
Yes. That's what that was her thing was like, why are you even putting this in a book? This is like between us.
Yeah. Like,
so
even if it is true.
Yes.
Like why would you even go and do that?
And there's no way of knowing. So that was something that people say throughout her tennis career is she has these rocky relationships that almost doesn't affect her on the court. And like we were saying before, why she's so stoic and professional is she has all this shit going on in her personal life, but she still is dominating.
Oh, yeah, no. She finished 1974 with a 107 match record.
I love that record.
16 tournament wins.
Yep.
Like, if you're talking best tennis player, male or female, like if you're talking most dominant, not necessarily the best, but the most dominant
of their era.
That's her.
Yep.
Right now. That's 1974 Chris Evert.
Yep. And then she's ranked number 1 for the first time in the world.
In 75, yeah.
Yeah.
Wins the French Open, wins her first of 4 U.S. Opens.
4 straight.
Yeah, 4 straight.
That's so crazy.
And then 4 straight of her 6. And then 20 or over 200 weeks or 26 weeks at the top.
Yeah. So she was world number 1, 74 through 78. And then world number 1 again in 80 and 81. But that era of almost 5 years where she was just dominating. And I saw a statistic that I thought was so weird that she actually took off. So she didn't do.
Yeah, she was taking Grand Slams off.
Yes.
Like she wasn't doing the Aussie for a little bit.
And she didn't do the French, which was her
Yeah.
her dominant tournament, and people were saying that the allure of Grand Slams weren't as big at that point. They were trying to get something else going. It was like a professional league of tennis.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
it pretty much died in like 78, and then everybody went back to just only doing Grand Slams.
Which is crazy because she won 18 Grand Slams.
I
So
know.
I think she could have probably won in the low to maybe even mid-20s.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs. For all of the, matches or all of the Grand Slam tournaments she missed. And then 76 wins Wimbledon, U.S. Open, and she still, while she lost to Yvonne Goolagong at the Virginia Slims, which is a great sponsor for tennis.
Yeah.
Tennis requires no cardiovascular fitness at all, so
Oh, that's so good.
let's do cigarettes.
Yep.
Let's do cigarettes.
Something else I saw was interesting because she was such an icon that a lot of stuff kind of gets lost in the zeitgeist or whatever. She had a diamond bracelet.
Yeah,
I think this
bracelet.
is 78.
Yeah, Wimbledon. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was always called just a diamond bracelet.
Yeah.
And then she she lost it in the middle of a match, and she referred to it as her tennis bracelet. And from then on, diamond bracelets are now called tennis bracelets.
Which is fantastic.
Well, it's just one of those things. That's how iconic she was if she says something, it makes it,
When in '76, she was Sports Illustrated Sports Person of the Year,
The only woman at that point to have a solo cover.
which should tell you, of that time period, especially with the lack of kind of women's professional sports
Exactly.
in society, for her to achieve something like that in a man's world, let's just say it's 1976, that just illustrates how good she is and how much she captured culture.
Yes, culture and
Sports culture.
Yeah.
Like, even if you weren't a tennis fan, you knew who the hell she was. Because it's like, oh, it's that pretty lady dominating in all these tennis matches.
exactly.
77 and 78, she won the U.S. Opens on hard and clay courts. I know you had brought that one.
Well, she's the only woman to do that. So she's the only woman because she was dominating so much in that era. Nobody won it in clay, and then was still playing to win it when I think they switched it to Flushing Meadows or whatever.
yeah,
it was.
they do it in like New York, I
Yeah.
think now. Yeah. But yeah, top of her game. Just the absolute top of her game.
Well, I think the best statistic that I have from her is on clay.
Yep.
She had 125 consecutive wins, and then she lost, and then proceeded to have 64 consecutive wins. So her record on clay at one point was 189 out of 191. It's insane.
That's ridiculous.
If you were like, I'm going to go to the French Open, you're like, who are you playing? Oh shit, I got Chris Evert. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, you're not thinking you're going to get past her ever.
Yeah. And then what ends up happening, because eventually someone comes around to challenge her.
Well, now I was going to say, now we get to where real athletes are becoming a staple in these, like women's tennis.
I shouldn't. I don't know if real athletes is the right word, but like,
the
weight
training. Yes.
Yeah, real physical endurance and real weight training become a part of women's tennis.
Because we're about to bring up Navratilova.
Martina Navratilova.
And I thought it was so interesting. Chris Evert said the first time I saw Martina Navratilova, I actually laughed because she was like 50 pounds overweight.
Before she started her weight training regimen and starting to really get that physical fitness in order, she was kind of a dumpy frame.
Yes.
I mean, and that's how Evert was taking advantage of her and beating her at the beginning of this rivalry.
Exactly.
Based on physical endurance, and not that Chris was a powerful kind of tennis player. I mean, granted, with her two-handed forehand and two-handed backhand, she was very good, but it wasn't like she was in the gym every day pumping iron and, building muscle.
Navratilova said, and it's one of the best quotes, she said, Chris isn't good at tennis. And it's just like, she just like made that blanket statement. She goes, she beats all of us through her mental game.
Yeah.
And that's what a baseline player does.
Yeah.
So like she stays on the baseline and just tires you out. And that's when we see her dominance stop, is when Martina finally gets her physical in order, her physique in order, and then she can finally start challenging her. And that's what people said that really propelled the sport, like a magic bird, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where these athletes just kind of have to step up their game because they see it was just like, well, she beat me last time, I'm going to have to step it up next time.
Well, and that's kind of the cool part is like Evert made the sport popular because she's like the star that's marketable and everything else, which is great for women's tennis. You can make it even more popular if you have a foil and someone who's kind of the opposite, because you have the powerful Navratilova, muscular,
yes.
Yeah, against the dainty, yet, what did they call her? Ice princess, because she was
Maiden.
Ice Maiden.
Yeah.
On the court too. So it's just like the perfect foil. And when you have that, almost like a magic and bird, it's like, that's marketing gold for your sport.
It propels the sport, and then I can only imagine that it gets, when kids are getting into it, that's what really gets the drive built into them.
What I found most interesting, despite their back and forth, is, at least in Evert's case, she won at least one Grand Slam singles title in 13 straight years, from 74 to 86.
And she was taking Grand Slams off.
And that's the other thing I wanted to bring up. She sat out the Aussie Open, 75 through 80 and 83, and the French Open from 76 to 78.
It's crazy. I'll give you one more statistic that I think is my favorite. In Grand Slam events, she made the semifinal on all of them except 4. 3 of those were at the absolute twilight of her career.
Yeah, towards the end.
3 of them it was like 2 of them in 88 and 1 in 89.
And 89's her last year.
The one in 83, she lost in the 3rd round because she had food poisoning and they wouldn't let her delay the match.
Oh my God.
So it's one of those things where she was making the semifinal every single... If you wanted to win a Grand Slam, you had to beat Chris Evert.
And her record in these Grand Slam events, at least in the singles, speaks for itself. 297 and 38.
Oh, yeah.
That is almost an 89% winning percentage.
It's crazy.
Which means basically 9 times out of 10 that she was in a match in a Grand Slam, most of which she's losing in the semifinals and finals.
Yep.
She's winning 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah. I found it interesting, though, that Navratilova actually has a better record against her.
She does.
Her and there's one other woman that has, like, I think it's like 6 to 5. So
yeah,
it's not really
it's not an extended kind of thing.
Everybody else, you look at the record, it's like 22 and 1, and like it's crazy. But this was the
37 and 43. That's what it was.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I actually thought it was very interesting. Chris said that Navratilova trained to beat her. So she wasn't as great against other tennis players as she was against Chris, because like that was her whole mission.
And like you see that a lot in individual sports where you're just like, I'm going to see this person at some point.
Yep.
They're the only thing preventing me. I'm going to do it. Like you see it in team sports sometimes, like within divisions, like how you construct a team to be, who you play more often than others. But like particularly in individual sports like tennis, that's the way you do it.
Yep.
That's how it's essentially always been done, I would think.
I found it interesting because they've always kind of been friends, but they've always really been just the biggest rivals.
Yeah, the biggest rivals on the court, but good friends the second it's over. Particularly Evert, who, unlike Navratilova, is not as emotional.
Yes.
She can leave it all on the court and then go about her day.
Yeah.
And absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, the records that she holds shouldn't be broken. I doubt they ever will be.
Yeah, no, I mean, 18 Grand Slams, 3 doubles. From 1975, this is what I found so interesting. From November 1975 through August 1987, she was ranked number 1 the entire time, save for 23 scattered weeks.
Yep.
That is basically 13 years where you're the best player in the entire world.
Well, that 13-year, that I want to call it the Everett time frame. she was either ranked number 1 at the end of the year or number 2.
Yeah.
That's it. There wasn't anybody else.
There's no bronze medal for Chris Evert.
No.
Like,
yeah.
It's almost a Ricky Bobby, you ain't first, you're last type of thing.
100%. And she made this sport popular. And got to give it up for Billie Jean that kind of saw that as, like, I think she said it was the first U.S. Open where she saw like 15, 16-year-old girls like actually getting into it.
Yeah, and Chris Evert after that went back to her high school. She still hadn't graduated Thomas Aquinas. Like, come on, that's crazy.
Yeah.
1985, she's named Women's Sports Foundation greatest woman athlete of the last 25 years.
100%. It's such a... It has to... Like, I can't think of another woman in that era that did more for a sport.
Oh, yeah, and I don't know if you remember the Sports Century for ESPN. In 1999, they did the 50 greatest athletes of the last century.
Yeah.
Chris Evert made the list at number 50.
Yeah.
And I can't think of how many other women... I mean, I'd have to look at the list again. Probably you can count on one hand the amount of women athletes on that list.
Yeah.
I remember they put Secretariat on that list, which I'm like, that's not the person.
No.
Like, get the fuck out of here.
Get out of here.
She should be ranked ahead of that goddamn horse. That's all I'm saying.
100%. And didn't she win? I'm trying to look it up. Didn't she win her last French Open in 86?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she beat Navratilova.
Yeah, which was probably like coming full circle as far as a career because...
Well, she said that in the beginning of her career, she was crushing her. And then there was a point where Navratilova was crushed. Like, it really went back and forth. And then in that 86 French Open, it was like the culmination of her career.
And she's playing on a surface which benefited her more than Navratilova because on the hard court, when Navratilova hits that ball so darn fast, that's where she can really take advantage of a player like Evert. But on kind of a deadened clay court, where you're more based on angles, you play better from the baseline and things like that, then it's like, okay, Chris Evert has a huge advantage here when she's on point, and she was.
Well, I thought it was really interesting because the 2 tennis episodes that we've done on this podcast, they're both baseline players. And if you think about it, a lot of people are saying that Chris Evert was one of the first, if not the first, to really take that baseline style and win Grand Slams. Like, people had it before, but they weren't dominating.
She almost perfected it, and perfected it for the women's game and just tennis in general.
Yes.
She was that good. But 2012, the Tennis Channel ranked their 100 greatest tennis players, and she ranked 9th. And as far as women goes, only Graf Navratilova and Margaret Smith Court were ahead of her.
Yeah.
That she had a tennis career that spanned basically 2 decades, but as a professional, but made the complete and total most out of it. Mm-hmm. Like, just established herself as the top of the heap and made it popular and enjoyable for the masses to watch because, even if you're a tennis fan in the late 60s, early 70s, you're probably, which is a very small group of people, you're probably only watching the men play and you're probably only watching them in Grand Slams.
Exactly.
She's on the cover of magazines, she's dominating. She's having high-profile relationships with people. Like, it's
Burt Reynolds, baby.
Burt Reynolds. Oh man, I love it. The Bandit.
Yep.
Oh, the Bandit.
I mean, let's be honest. We all want to date Burt Reynolds. So
yeah.
And she ended up marrying Greg Norman later in life. So she had just like an amazing life. I can't deny anything that she really does.
She made an amazing life for herself and arguably one of the greatest women's and tennis players who's ever existed.
Hey everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say, give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.